Welcome to QuickSpeak English, the podcast that helps you become more fluent and confident in speaking English. Today we're going to talk about guilt. It's a feeling that everyone experiences, but it can be hard to understand.
Yeah, guilt is very common, but it's also complex.
So in this episode, we're going to explore the psychology of guilt.
Okay.
Like, what is it?
Yeah.
What purpose does it serve? And how does it affect our mental health? We'll also learn some ways to deal with guilt so it doesn't become a problem. Before we get into all that, how about we just start by defining guilt? What do we mean when we say, I feel guilty?
That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
In simple terms, guilt is a feeling of discomfort or unease that we experience when we believe we've done something wrong. It's that nagging feeling that tells us that we've violated our own moral code, or maybe we let someone down.
Because like an internal alarm bell?
Yeah.
Telling us we need to pay attention to something.
Precisely.
Okay.
And it's fascinating because this alarm bell, it's not just there to make us feel bad, it actually serves a purpose.
Oh, okay.
In our lives. You could even say it's essential for our well-being.
Okay, interesting. So you're saying that guilt can actually be a good thing?
Absolutely.
Even though it feels uncomfortable?
Yes. Guilt can be a powerful motivator for positive change.
Okay.
For example, imagine you accidentally hurt a friend's feelings. The guilt you feel might prompt you to apologize.
Yeah.
Try to make things right.
Okay.
Be more careful with your words in the future. In this way, guilt helps us maintain healthy relationships and become more thoughtful individuals.
So in a way, guilt is like a moral compass, guiding us towards making better choices. But I imagine there's a point where guilt can become too much right. Like if we're constantly feeling guilty for small things, that can't be healthy.
There's a big difference between healthy guilt, the kind that helps us grow, and what we might call toxic guilt, which can be damaging.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
What's the difference between healthy and toxic guilt?
Healthy guilt is proportionate to the situation.
Okay.
Let's say you forget a friend's birthday.
Yeah.
You might feel a pang of guilt, which is understandable. You apologize, maybe make it up to them in some way, and you move on. But with toxic guilt, the feeling is much more intense and long-lasting. It's out of proportion to the event that triggered it. And often it stems from irrational beliefs about ourselves or the situation.
So like feeling guilty for something that wasn't really our fault, or beating ourselves up over a mistake we made years ago.
And this kind of excessive irrational guilt can have a negative impact on our mental well-being.
What are some of the negative effects of feeling too much guilt?
Well, for one, it can lead to anxiety and depression.
Oh, wow.
If you're constantly dwelling on past mistakes or feeling inadequate, it can weigh you down emotionally. It can also damage our relationship. If we're always feeling guilty and apologizing, feel uncomfortable or start to resent us.
That makes sense. It's like carrying around a heavy burden.
And sometimes people use guilt to manipulate others.
Guilt tripping. Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
And give us some examples.
Guilt tripping is a way of trying to control someone's behavior by making them feel guilty. It's emotional manipulation. A common example is the silent treatment.
Oh, yeah.
When someone refuses to speak to you to make you feel bad. And to get you to do what they want.
I think we've all experienced that. What are some other examples of guilt tripping?
There are many subtle ways it can happen. Someone might make passive-aggressive remarks. Like, oh, it's fine, don't worry about me, I'll just do it myself. Even though they clearly want your help. Or they might constantly bring up past mistakes to make you feel bad.
So it's like using guilt as a weapon.
Precisely.
To get what they want.
And it's important to recognize these tactics so you don't fall prey to them.
That's a really important point. So we've talked about the difference between healthy and toxic guilt, and how guilt can be used in manipulative ways. What about those of us who are just naturally prone to feeling guilty? What can we do to manage those feelings?
That's a great question. And there are a lot of things we can do to work through our guilt and prevent it from taking over our lives.
You mentioned that there are ways to manage those feelings and prevent them from becoming overwhelming.
Exactly.
I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some practical things we can do to manage our guilt more effectively?
One powerful approach is mindfulness meditation.
Okay.
It's a practice that's becoming increasingly popular
for
managing all sorts of difficult emotions, including guilt.
Mindfulness. I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
But I'm not entirely sure what it means. Can you explain it?
Sure.
In a way that's easy to understand?
Mindfulness is simply the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about noticing your thoughts and feelings as they arise, but not getting carried away by them.
So instead of dwelling on those guilty thoughts and letting them spiral,
Yeah.
we're simply acknowledging them and letting them pass.
Exactly. Think of it like watching clouds drift by in the sky.
Okay.
You observe them, but you don't grab hold of them or change them. You just let them be.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It sounds very calming.
It is.
But how does this apply to dealing with guilt?
When you're feeling guilty, try to notice the physical sensations in your body.
Okay.
Maybe you feel a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach.
Yeah.
Just observe those sensations without judging yourself.
Okay.
Then gently shift your attention to your breath.
Okay.
Notice the rise and fall of your chest as you breathe in and out.
So we're creating a space between ourselves and those guilt-inducing thoughts.
Exactly.
Allowing us to see them more objectively.
Precisely. And the more we practice this, the less power those thoughts will have over us. It's like building a muscle. At first, it might be difficult, but with consistent practice, it becomes easier.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Are there other techniques besides mindfulness that can help us manage our guilt?
Another very effective approach is something called cognitive restructuring. It's a fancy term.
Yeah.
But it basically means challenging and reframing the negative thoughts that contribute to our guilt.
So instead of just accepting those guilty thoughts as truth, we're actually questioning them.
Exactly.
And looking for alternative perspectives.
Let's say you make a mistake at work.
Okay.
And you start feeling guilty.
Yeah.
You might think, I'm so stupid. I always mess things up. I'm going to get fired.
Right.
These are very harsh and self-critical thoughts. Cognitive restructuring encourages you to examine these thoughts and ask yourself, is this thought really true?
Okay.
What's the evidence to support it? Is there another way to look at this situation?
So it's like we're playing detective, trying to separate fact from fiction.
And often when we examine our thought, we find they're based on distorted thinking patterns or unrealistic expectations.
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like we're taking back control of our thoughts instead of letting them control us.
Another important aspect of managing guilt is cultivating self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah.
That sounds important.
It is.
But I'm not sure I fully understand what it means.
Of course.
Can you elaborate?
Self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a good friend.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we all make mistakes. We all have flaws.
And that's okay.
So instead of beating ourselves up for our imperfection, we're offering ourselves forgiveness and understanding.
Exactly. It's about being gentle with ourselves.
Yeah.
Especially when we're feeling guilty.
I like that. It sounds like a much healthier approach.
It is.
To our mistakes.
Yeah.
But how do we actually practice self-compassion? Are there specific exercises we can try?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
One powerful technique is to write a compassionate letter to yourself.
To myself.
Imagine you're writing to a close friend who's going through the same situation. What words of comfort and encouragement would you offer them? Write those same words to yourself.
Wow, that's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
It's like giving ourselves the pep talk.
Exactly.
You would give to someone we care about.
Another powerful practice is loving kindness meditation.
Loving kindness meditation.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a beautiful practice where you cultivate feelings of love and kindness. So far, we've talked about mindfulness, cognitive restructuring, and self-compassion.
Yes.
Are there any other strategies?
Yes, there are.
When it comes to managing guilt?
A couple more things to keep in mind.
Okay.
Setting realistic expectations for ourselves is crucial.
Okay.
Often we set the bar too high and then feel guilty when we fall short.
Yeah.
Remember, it's okay to be imperfect.
Right.
We're all human.
Yeah.
We're all learning and growing.
Sometimes we forget to give ourselves permission to be human.
And the second thing to remember is the importance of forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Yes.
Why is that so important?
Well,
when it comes to dealing with guilt?
When we hold on to anger and resentment, we're keeping ourselves trapped in a cycle of guilt and negativity. Forgiveness is about letting go of those heavy emotions and allowing ourselves to move forward.
So forgiveness is like a key that unlocks the door to freedom from guilt.
When it comes to self-forgiveness, it's important to remember that you did the best you could with the knowledge and resources you had at the time.
That's a really helpful perspective.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in self-blame and forget to give ourselves that grace.
And if you're finding it difficult to forgive yourself or someone else, it can be really helpful to talk to a therapist or counselor. They can provide support and guidance as you work through those emotions.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need a little extra help.
We do.
To navigate those feelings. So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From understanding the nature of guilt to exploring strategies for managing it effectively. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just to reiterate that guilt is a normal human emotion.
We've talked about how guilt can sometimes be helpful, guiding us to make better choices, but also how it can become a real problem if it's not managed effectively.
Exactly. And I think a key takeaway is that we have more control over our guilt than we might realize.
That's right. We don't have to be victims of our own guilt. We have the power to choose how we respond.
Absolutely. By using techniques like mindfulness, cognitive restructuring, self-compassion, and forgiveness, we can shift our relationship with guilt and prevent it from taking over our lives.
I love that. It's so empowering to realize that we have the tools to navigate guilt in a healthy way. It's all about becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings and choosing to respond with kindness and understanding.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, if you're struggling with guilt or any other difficult emotion, you don't have to go through it alone.
This has been a truly insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And for those of you listening, we hope you found this episode of QuickSpeak English helpful in improving your English fluency. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more episodes on a wide range of topics to help you master the art of speaking English fluently and confidently.
And be sure to visit our website, which you can find in the description below. We have lots of additional learning materials there, including vocabulary lists and exercises related to today's episode.
Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back for our next episode. Until then, keep practicing your English and embrace the journey of learning.